The operating room at Mercy General Hospital was silent except for the hum of machinery. Dr. Elellanar Blackwood stood over Ethan Harrison, her scalpel poised above the pulsating lesion on his back. Under the surgical lights, the thing beneath his skin writhed, alive and unidentifiable. 3 weeks earlier, Ethan had returned from a camping trip in Olympic National Park with what he thought were bug bites. But now the lesion throbbed like a second heartbeat. Dr. Robert stumbled backward, knocking over a tray of instruments. The nurse froze, eyes wide behind her mask. Behind the observation glass, Ethan's wife, Abigail, watched in horror as her coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. "Get the CDC on the line," Dr. Blackwood said sharply. "Nobody leaves this room." Whatever was growing inside Ethan wasn't just dangerous. It might already be spreading. Ethan Harrison was the kind of man who made life look effortless, even when it wasn't. At 35, he juggled a high-pressure software engineering job at a Seattle tech firm with weekend escapes into the wilds of the Pacific Northwest. His sandy hair was perpetually tousled, his easy smile disarming, and his hazel eyes held a spark of adventure that hadn't dimmed since college. His wife, Abigail, head nurse at Mercy General, was his perfect complement. Practical where he was impulsive, compassionate where he was stubborn, always packing extra bandages and granola bars for their outings. Their 4-year-old daughter, Lily, was a whirlwind of blonde curls and boundless curiosity, collecting treasures from every hike. Pine cones, smooth river stones, even the occasional beetle she'd present with a squeal of delight. Their Maple Valley home, with its white picket fence and overgrown garden, was a haven of suburban normalcy, the kind of place where neighbors waved and kids rode bikes until dusk. On a crisp May morning, Ethan loaded a Subaru Outback for a camping trip with 2 college friends, James and Christopher. The plan was simple. 3 days in Olympic National Park, a ritual they'd kept since their University of Washington days. Abigail handed him a thermos of coffee, her brow furrowed. "You checked the weather?" she asked, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "Clear skies all weekend," Ethan replied, kissing her forehead. "I'll sleep in the tent every night, I promise." Lily clung to his legs, her green eyes wide. "Find me a fairy stone, Daddy," she demanded. Ethan knelt, grinning. "Something magical just for you," he promised, ruffling her hair. Abigail watched him drive off, an inexplicable unease settling in her chest. Was it just a wife's worry or something more? The drive to Olympic National Park was a winding journey through towering evergreens, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. At Heart of the Hills campground, the trio set up with practiced ease. Ethan pitching the tent, James organizing the cooler, Christopher fiddling with a portable speaker for their evening playlist. The first night was all laughter and nostalgia, roasting marshmallows over a crackling campfire, retelling stories of college pranks and late-night coding sessions. On the second night, under a sky ablaze with stars, Christopher suggested sleeping outside. "When do we get a view like this in Seattle?" he argued, gesturing at the Milky Way's shimmering arc. Ethan hesitated, Abigail's caution echoing his mind, but the allure of the night won out. "Why not?" he said, unrolling his sleeping bag onto the soft forest floor. James, ever the skeptic, grumbled but joined them, muttering about bugs. As they settled in, a strange phenomenon began. Tiny greenish blue lights, no bigger than fireflies, danced through the clearing. They moved in hypnotic patterns, swirling and dipping, hovering close to men before darting away. Fireflies? Ethan wondered aloud, though he knew they were rare in Washington. Maybe some bioluminescent insect. James offered, his voice tinged with awe. For 20 minutes, the lights wove their silent ballet, their glow casting eerie shadows on the men's faces. "It's like the forest is putting on a show just for us," Ethan murmured, his eyes heavy as he drifted to sleep. The lights faded into the trees, leaving only the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Morning brought red, itchy bumps on Ethan's back and shoulders, dozens of them, scattered like a constellation across his skin. "Mosquitoes found me tasty," he joked, slathering on anti-itch cream from a first aid kit. Christopher had a few welts, 2, mostly on his arms. James, who'd slept in layers, had only a couple. They laughed it off, blaming the open-air sleeping arrangement, and spent their final day hiking the park's trails, marveling at moss-draped trees and the rush of the Elwha River. Ethan found a smooth, iridescent stone by the riverbank, its surface catching the light like a tiny galaxy. "Lily's fairy stone," he said, pocketing it with a smile. By the time he drove home, texting Abigail his ETA, the itching had worsened, but he dismissed it as an annoyance. That night, as Lily squealed over her new treasure, Abigail examined the bumps under their kitchen's fluorescent light. They were raised, inflamed, some already crusting over. "These don't look like mosquito bites," she said, her nurse's instincts flaring. Ethan shrugged, scratching absently. "Probably poison oak. It'll pass." But Abigail's unease grew. Why were the bumps so uniform, so persistent? What had really happened under those stars? "You're starting to wonder, aren't you?" Something was already taking root inside him. 5 days after the trip, Ethan's bumps had transformed into angry, reddish-purple welts, some as large as quarters, their centers hard and unnaturally firm. Abigail's concern turned to alarm. "You're seeing a doctor," she insisted, her voice brooking no argument. But Ethan, buried in a critical software release at work, delayed. "It's just a rash," he said, popping antihistamines and ignoring the growing discomfort. By the weekend, a fever gripped him, 101.5 degrees Fahrenheit, then 103 degrees Fahrenheit, his skin clammy, his energy sapped. The welts now had yellowish, pulsating cores, as if something inside was alive, pressing against his flesh. Abigail, her nursing training overriding her panic, drove him to Mercy General's R, Lily staying with a neighbor. Under the hospital's harsh lights, Ethan's grayish pallor and sweat-soaked forehead made Abigail's heart lurch. The triage nurse, seeing the lesions, bypassed the waiting room and rushed him to an exam bay. Dr. Thomas Keller, a grizzled ER veteran with decades of experience, examined Ethan's back, his gloved fingers probing the welts. His face tightened, a rare crack in his professional calm. "These appeared after camping?" he asked, his tone clipped. 8 days ago." Ethan managed, his voice weak. Keller's eyes met Abigail's, and she recognized the look. Controlled urgency. He called in Dr. Elellanar Blackwood, Mercy General's infectious disease specialist, whose reputation for solving medical mysteries was unmatched. Dr. Blackwood, a wiry woman with sharp gray eyes, spent 20 minutes examining Ethan. Her questions relentless. "Did you sleep on the ground? Swim in any lakes? Notice any unusual insects?" Ethan described the glowing lights, assuming they were harmless fireflies. Blackwood's pause was heavy, her silence louder than words. "We're admitting him immediately," she told Abigail. "These lesions suggest a systemic infection, possibly parasitic." Parasitic? Abigail's mind reeled. "In Washington? How?" Ethan was moved to an isolation room, its walls a cold, clinical white. Nurses in protective gear drew blood, swabbed the lesions, and sent samples to the lab with urgent tags. Abigail, barred from entering, watched through a window, her hands pressed against the glass. She called James and Christopher, learning both had similar symptoms, though milder. James, in Seattle, described welts on his arms that itched but hadn't worsened. Christopher, in Vancouver, was running a low fever. "Those lights we saw," James over the phone, his voice uneasy, "they didn't just hover. They moved deliberately, like they were targeting us." Abigail's stomach twisted. What had they stumbled into? In the operating room, the truth clawed its way out. Dr. Blackwood, assisted by Dr. Robert and the surgical team, made an incision into one of Ethan's largest lesions. The room fell silent as she extracted a wriggling, inch-long larva, its segmented body glistening under the lights. "Dermatobia hominis," Dr. Blackwood said, her voice steady but grim. "Human botfly." The team found 43 larvae embedded in Ethan's skin, some burrowed deeper than expected, dangerously close to his thoracic spine. A second surgery was scheduled to remove them, as imaging revealed potential nerve involvement. Abigail, briefed in the sterile consult room, struggled to process it. Botflies were tropical, not native to the Pacific Northwest. How had they reached Olympic National Park? And why was Ethan's infection so severe? Dr. Maxwell, A tropical medicine specialist flown in from Atlanta confirmed the larvae were unusually aggressive. Their growth accelerated. The CDC was notified, and Dr. Naomi Carter, a parasitologist, arrived within hours, her questions probing deeper. Any international travel? Contact with unusual wildlife. Ethan, sedated post-surgery, couldn't answer. Abigail's mind raced. Those lights that night, what had they really seen? You're feeling it now, aren't you? The pieces of this puzzle are starting to form a chilling picture. Ethan's recovery was a battle fought on multiple fronts. The surgeries removed the larvae, but complications arose. A pulmonary embolism, triggered by prolonged bed rest and systemic inflammation, sent him to the ICU. A ventilator breathed for him as thrombolytics worked to dissolve the clot. Abigail's vigil was unrelenting, her nursing expertise a double-edged sword. She knew every risk, every potential outcome. She slept in the hospital's family lounge, waking to check Ethan's chart, her hands trembling as she read oxygen levels and infection markers. Dr. Margaret White-Hawk, an integrative medicine specialist, joined the team at Abigail's request, suggesting a holistic approach to complement the aggressive antibiotics and antifungals. She introduced anti-inflammatory botanicals, antimicrobial salves for the surgical sites, and guided imagery sessions to reduce Ethan's stress. Abigail, skeptical of alternative methods, watched in cautious amazement as Ethan's inflammation markers dropped, his color returning after a session where he visualized a forest stream washing away the infection. "It feels right," he told her weakly, squeezing her hand, "like we're fighting something deeper than just bugs." The CDC's investigation brought a revelation that turned Abigail's fear to fury. Dr. Carter, after analyzing the larvae's genetic markers, revealed they were lab-reared, deliberately released in a 5-mile radius around the Heart of the Hills campground. "This wasn't a natural outbreak," she said, her voice low. "We're looking at environmental sabotage." A radical group, aiming to highlight climate change's role in spreading tropical diseases, had released the botflies, infecting 27 people across the U.S. Ethan's case was the worst. His immune system, compromised by a mild undiagnosed autoimmune condition, had allowed the larvae to thrive. Christopher, hospitalized in Vancouver, had 20 larvae removed and was recovering. James, treated outpatient, had 5. The perpetrators, tracked through encrypted communications, were a mix of misguided idealists and zealous activists. One, a 25-year-old biologist, met Ethan in a mediated session, tears streaming as she apologized. Ethan's anger was a storm, but her remorse cracked its surface. Dr. White-Hawk spoke of forgiveness as a path to healing, but Ethan wrestled with it. How do you forgive someone who turned your body into a battlefield? 6 months later, Ethan stood on the rocky shore of Puget Sound, the iridescent heart-shaped stone in his pocket, a gift from Lily he carried like a talisman. His lung function was 90% restored, his scars a permanent map of his ordeal. He'd left his tech job, taking a role with the CDC's public health education team, channeling his experience into warning others about emerging disease risks. The trial of the saboteurs loomed, and Ethan chose to testify, not for revenge, but for accountability, to ensure no one else suffered as he had. Abigail, beside him, had been his rock, her strength unwavering even when her own fears threatened to break her. Lily, oblivious to the ordeal's depth, ran along the shore, chasing seagulls, her laughter a reminder of what they'd fought for. Ethan's trauma had reshaped him, stripping away complacency and revealing life's fragility. He noticed the small things now, the warmth of Abigail's hand, the salt tang of the sea, the weight of a stone in his pocket. What had those glowing lights been? A lure, perhaps engineered to draw the botfly's hosts. The truth was unsettling, but it had forged him anew. You're seeing it now, aren't you? How a single night can rewrite a life. Ethan Harrison's story began with a starry night in Olympic National Park, a fleeting moment of beauty that hid a sinister truth. What seemed like bug bites unraveled into a nightmare of parasitic infection, a deliberate act of sabotage that nearly stole his life. Through weeks of hospital battles, a wife's relentless love, and a daughter's innocent faith, Ethan emerged not just alive, but transformed. His scars told a story of survival. His new path with the CDC, a commitment to protect others. the heart-shaped stone, found by a river and cherished by Lily, became his anchor, a reminder what endured, love, resilience, the quiet beauty of ordinary moments. Have you faced a moment that shifted your world? A health scare, a betrayal, a quiet epiphany under the stars? What small, ordinary thing brought you joy this week? A child's laugh, a warm drink, a walk by the water? Share your story below, from wherever you're reading this. Ethan's journey shows us that life's darkest trials can reveal its brightest gifts. Let's hear about yours.